Controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. Sir Keir Starmer is driving the car industry into the brick wall of high costs and more regulation as he puts Brexit into reverse gear, as GB News reveals his latest plans. Tonight, I'm joined by the man who freed us from the block, Lord Frost. Meanwhile, the UK is set to recognise Palestine's statehood in one of the Prime Minister's most controversial U-turns yet. The former Attorney-General, Sir Michael Ellis, joins me shortly. The failing Tate Gallery has risibly blamed Brexit for boring its visitors away. We will reveal why this is nonsense. Plus, we will show why the Blob's plot to oust Nigel Farage amidst the news of the Parliamentary Watchdog's investigation is important. State of the Nation starts now. Joined by my most punctilious panel, the former Reform press spokesman Gawain Towler and the journalist and broadcaster Matthew Stadlen. As always, I want to know your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Jacob. Good evening to you. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. Airlines are attempting to restore their operations after an air traffic control fault caused major disruption this afternoon. Approximately 45 departures were cancelled, along with 35 arrivals to the UK. Heathrow, the worst affected for cancellations, and more than a dozen flights en route there were diverted. The air traffic control provider, NATS, says the system has been restored, but further delays are expected. And the government says it will be working closely with air traffic control to understand the cause of the issue. A student has been found guilty of assaulting 2 female police officers and a member of the public at Manchester Airport last summer. A jury at Liverpool Crown Court found Mohammed Fahir Amaz, on the right of your picture, guilty on 3 counts of assault. They were unable to reach a verdict on 1 count of assault of another police officer involving Amaz and his brother Mohammed Ahmad. There will now be a retrial on that charge, which has been welcomed by Greater Manchester Police. Palestine Action's co-founder has won a bid to bring a challenge over the group's ban as a terror organisation. The High Court's ruled the Home Secretary's prescription of the group under anti-terror laws should be reviewed. Yvette Cooper banned the organisation last month after activists caused an estimated £7 million worth of damage to military planes at RAF Bryce Norton. However, the group has failed in its bid for a temporary pause of the ban until that challenge is heard by the High Court. The Health Secretary has warned striking doctors if they go to war with the government, they'll lose. Resident doctors finished a 5-day strike over pay earlier this morning. While writing in The Guardian, Wes Streeting says Labour will not meet the union's 29% pay demands, but says both sides can win the peace, adding doctors have squandered the considerable goodwill they had with the government. He has invited the BMA for fresh talks next week to discuss working conditions, but says he will not negotiate on pay. And Ozzy Osbourne's family joined thousands of fans in paying an emotional farewell to the heavy metal star during a procession in Birmingham. A tearful Sharon Osbourne, who was married to Ozzy for more than 4 decades, added a rose to the hundreds of floral tributes and balloons that have been laid around the Black Sabbath bench as people in the crowd chanted his name. She was joined by family members, including children Kelly and Jack. While tens of thousands of fans gathered to pay their respects as Ozzy's body was transported in a cortege. The hearse was topped by a purple floral tribute in the shape of a cross. A private funeral is expected to take place tomorrow. Those are your latest headlines. I'll be back with more at 9 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Sir Keir Starmer's true colours as Mr. Second Referendum are showing. Here's a reminder of what he used to think about Brexit.
It's right that Parliament has the first say. It's right that Parliament has the first say. But if we need to break the impasse, our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option.
Well, and here was his tremendous handbrake turn on the same issue.
There's no case for going back into the EU, and that includes the single market and the customs union.
And speaking of handbrake turns, GB News has revealed the Prime Minister is set to lose Brexit freedoms in the car industry through his reset that forces dynamic alignment with the European Union. Shared exclusively with GB News, the new Stand for Our Sovereignty organisation, backed by the think tank Brexit Facts for EU, has obtained proof that Britain's motor industry is to fall under EU rules. It was only last year that the Department of Transport issued a policy paper underlining the government's intention to seize the opportunities of Brexit to ensure our regulatory system is agile and pro-innovation. But here's the handbrake turn. In an official response from the Department of Transport to the House of Commons Secondary Legislation Scrutiny Committee, it reads, the department recently wrote to manufacturers to reassure them that GB regulations will be maintained to be aligned with those in the EU to ensure vehicles continue to be sold UK-wide. The department has made a commitment to an explicit presumption of alignment because this is in the interests of the UK in terms of breaking down barriers to trade with our largest trading partner in a predominantly export-focused industry and protecting the UK internal market. You must say that they speak with forked tongues, but never mind. Dynamic alignment with the EU is not in Britain's interest, especially when it comes to the car industry. It means copying EU rules automatically, no questions asked, even if those rules make no sense for British roads, British consumers or British manufacturers. It inevitably adds extra cost, and this is submission, kowtowing with a smile. If we stay independent, we can craft regulations that work for us, faster, leaner and cheaper. It's good for car makers, good for supply chains, good for drivers. You don't want to pay thousands more because some obscure EU bureaucrat says so. Let's not forget, outside the EU, we're free to strike trade deals that suit our market with the US, Japan, Australia, India, without getting tangled in European red tape. Dynamic alignment is a block on us, and we no longer want to get told what to do by that block, with or without the K. But unfortunately, under this government, dynamic alignment will extend well beyond the cars. We can expect this to apply to all sorts of sectors. What we need to do is take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. Then we can grow the economy, unleash our latent animal spirits, and improve living standards for everyone. As always, let me know your views via mailmog@gbnews.com. But I'm now absolutely delighted to be joined by the doyen of Brexit negotiations, Lord Frost. David, thank you for coming in.
Great to be here.
I suppose, first of all, the question to ask is this our fault? in that we separated out Northern Ireland, and the government saying, well, we'll have one rule for the UK, and I suppose there may be some argument for that.
Well, it seems pretty clear from the statement you just read out that where the references to the unity of the internal markets and so on, that Northern Ireland is a big part of it. And of course, we know that Northern Ireland arrangement was something that was imposed on us, that we tried to get rid of a couple of years back, didn't. We're now stuck with it in the Windsor framework. So that's clearly part of it. But I think, you know, looking behind this, one's got to remember, and it was clear from the films you were showing of Keir Starmer just now, that, you know, Labour we must expect them to do kind of irrational things economically because they just want to get closer back to the EU. They regard us being out of the EU as some sort of horrific historical aberration and just want to get back. So that's really what's driving it, not necessarily a calculus of sort of economic advantage. And that's why they do irrational things like this.
And it certainly does seem irrational because there's the very basic point that any car made for the UK market, or indeed the Indian market or the Japanese market, has the steering wheel on a different side from those that are sold in Germany, France, and the United States. And so our car manufacturers have always got to produce for this specific market.
Absolutely, and others often have to produce differently for us, and that's been the case for 100 years or more. As you set out, the real gain from Brexit in this area is being able to set rules that suit us, and the EU has historically shown itself to be a bad regulator, very heavy-handed, very intrusive, and that's what we're seeing with this latest wave of car regulation, stuff that probably is not necessary, that many people can't even figure out how to use in their own car quite often, and yet it's loaded up and pushing on extra costs into British new cars. And we don't have to do that unless we choose to align with EU rules.
And the question is, where does it go next? They've started doing it for the car industry, they've started doing it for the food industry. One of the great opportunities we have seems to be AI, that we're not burdened by the regulations that have actually stopped AI developing in the European Union. If the government goes down that route, that's really stopping us having a major economic advantage.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen, because it's the EU that has brought in a regulation on AI after we left. We haven't followed, so that divergence has opened up. And, you know, I think it sounds like the government have understood that, but who knows? You know, they're driven by wider things here.
Because there does seem to be some inherent contradiction in what the government's doing, because it got the trade deal with India, which it couldn't have got if it had been in the European Union. It admitted in the last couple of days that it got a better deal with the United States because of Brexit. And yet, if it follows all the EU regulations, which are essentially non-tariff trade barriers, then these trade deals will end up going up in a puff of smoke.
They're going to get harder and harder to get, because if we choose to subordinate ourselves to EU laws, then we don't have the power to change those laws when we're doing trade negotiations. And whichever country we're talking to can see that, you know, however toughly they negotiate, our laws in these areas are decided in Brussels and not in London. So it makes it much harder to get good trade deals. I think the decision to align on food will turn out to be a big problem for future negotiations. But it's not just that. The government have passed this law just before the break, the Product Regulation Act, as it now is, which gives them the power to align essentially with the stroke of a pen in any area of our manufacturing industries.
It's very similar to the 1972 European Communities Act, with one exception, and that is it can easily be repealed by an incoming government. And that must be the answer, isn't it? That the Windsor framework needs to go. We need to repeal the laws that are leading to dynamic alignment. And if the EU doesn't like it, it'll just have to lump it, because we are now technically legally independent, and that is the great victory of Brexit.
Absolutely, and we absolutely must commit to that now, so that you know, industry and the EU can see that it's a possibility after the next election. We absolutely must commit to that. But we've also got to remind ourselves that trade is not... I mean, Labour have got themselves into this view that trade, the main determinant of trade is paperwork. It really isn't. The main determinant of trade is how competitive your own market is, how successful it is, and whether you produce goods that people want. And of course, we have been deindustrialising, we've been pushing up energy costs, we've been making it more difficult for manufacturers.
And this comes back to further EU alignment, because energy costs will continue to rise if we have the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and if we carry on with the EU's emissions trading scheme, both of which will actually finish off our car industry because it'll be too expensive to make cars here, regardless of whether there's alignment or not.
Very likely. They'll definitely push up energy costs, which, let's not forget, they're already the highest, basically, in the developed world in this country. It's no surprise that manufactured exports are falling. I mean, who would invest here in any energy-intensive sort of industry? And indeed, companies aren't, and we're seeing it fall away. So we absolutely, one of the great gains was that we could go in our own direction on net zero, on energy policy. And of course, there now is a political divide on that. We need to go in a different direction.
When you look back at the negotiation you did, do you think with hindsight it would have been better to have left without a deal and then not have the Northern Ireland problem, not have the Windsor framework, and have gone off boldly doing our own thing?
I think there are arguments both ways. Of course, we didn't have the option in 2019 because Parliament had passed a law that said you can't leave without an agreement. And so we had to get the best agreement we could, and we were constrained in those terms. I think it's a good free trade agreement that we have. Is the biggest, the best in the world. It comes with some constraints, but it is the forerunner in some ways of the deals we're going to get with the rest of the world. The big problem was Northern Ireland. We could have taken that away a couple of years ago when Boris and when Liz Truss were Prime Minister, but unfortunately we didn't.
But has Trump showed us how you deal with the European Union? You just say to them, look, we don't want your smelly goods, and we'll put a huge tariff on them, and as you sell billions more to us than you buy from us, we could win.
I think what Trump shows is that you have to have a very clear sense of your own interests and be extremely forceful in pushing for them and making sure the other side understands that. And we tried to do that in our way in 2020. I'm not such a fan of tariffs as Trump is. And I think the size of our economy, we're never going to be able to put up a sort of tariff wall that enables us to produce within it. It's always going to be a different kind of mix for us.
And we're basically a free trading nation, which is where we want to be.
We historically have been for 200 years, and it's worked well for us so far.
David, thank you very much indeed. Shortly, in his most controversial U-turn yet, the Prime Minister has announced the UK will recognise Palestine's statehood.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's been an exceptional event, Dawn, Armed Forces Day, raising money for veterans and their families.
Johnny, well done.
Thank you so much. Very kind of you. It's been exceptional, really. I've got a lovely medal, which is another big win for the team. I just want to bring in Nick and Amanda. Amanda here is a veteran of the Australian Navy. She's married to Nick, who's a serving Royal Navy officer. How are you feeling, Amanda? Great success. Well done.
My legs are hurting, but I'm so happy that we've been here today. It's just been so much fun. It really has, and for such a great cause.
And this is a charity you both support very closely, Nick.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the armed forces protect the nation. SAPA protects the armed forces. We're really happy to be out today. It's been a super reception right the way along the route. Loads of lovely people out today, so it's been good fun. Sore legs.
And both of you met through the Navy, of course. It's an exciting armed forces love story. It must be wonderful for you to both give back to the armed forces community today.
Absolutely, and we will never stop giving back. We're Matlows at heart. I'm a veteran. I work for an aerospace and defence company who are going to match our donations that we raise. and it's just really exciting. So we'll always keep giving back.
And Nick, for you, you're still serving, but you must have such a close connection with our veterans community as well. Many people you must have known on this walk here today, over 1,200.
Yes.
How does it feel still serving in the Royal Navy, seeing how many members of the armed forces continue to support veterans and their families?
I think you never leave the armed forces. You never leave it, and it's lovely to see that the relationships that you form in service continue after. And you know, we work very hard to stay connected to all of our old shipmates and people that we've worked with for many years and sort of sat alongside in some odd places around the world.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, so week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and here was Sir Keir Starmer last night making his most controversial foreign policy U-turn.
Our goal remains a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state. But right now, that goal is under pressure like never before. So today, as part of this process towards peace, I can confirm the UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September.
Well, there was the Reverend Starmer at his most preachy. But the question is, does this make any sense? As Lord Wolfson has pointed out, it appears as though the decision rewards Hamas for waging war on Israel and for not returning the hostages. Because if they stop the war and return the hostages, Israel will not find Palestine is recognised. It's a very odd situation to be in. Anyway, I'm joined now by Carl Hansen, the editor-at-large of Tribune magazine. Carl, thank you very much for joining me. Do you think Keir Starmer has essentially come to this policy conclusion under pressure from both his cabinet and his backbenches, and it's not necessarily what he wanted to do?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's not just his cabinet and his backbenchers, but it's been the mass movement that we've seen over the past 2 years, where people have been protesting Israel's atrocities in Gaza and defending Palestinian rights. And he's feeling the political pressure and that he needs to do something. I mean, I don't think what he's doing is substantial enough, but it's only happening because of the pressure that's being brought to bear on him.
And what would you like him to do? How far do you think he should go? And perhaps also, what influence do you think the United Kingdom has in this matter anymore?
Well, Keir Starmer should be following our obligations under international law and holding Israel to account. So that means applying sanctions on it, halting all arms sales, expelling the ambassador, doing whatever it conducts military operations with Israel. And it's the responsibility of Keir Starmer and any government of conscience to do what they can to bring a halt to the horrors that we've seen unfolding.
I agree that everyone would want to see the horrors ending, but doesn't an ally have the right to defend itself after the brutal attacks that took place on the 7th of October? Isn't that why Israel is doing this, and that it's not unreasonable for our ally to want to see Hamas defeated?
This didn't begin on the 7th of October, and you can flip the question. Don't Palestinians have the right to defend themselves against blockade, against land theft, against the mass killing that's been happening to them for 77 years? I think it's a sort of fundamental mistake, or perhaps even a dishonesty, to throw all of the responsibility onto the Palestinians when, in this situation, they're the people who are being genocided, and they're the people who have faced decades of oppression and land theft.
But should one differentiate between the Palestinians and Hamas, which I think the government is trying to do, and that Hamas needs to be defeated, but that Hamas hides within the Palestinian population, and therefore the moral responsibility is on Hamas rather than on the Israeli government?
I don't think so. And if you look at what Israel's doing, it's been saying that it's been waging a war on Hamas for 2 years now, by bombing hospitals, by bombing schools, by shooting people at aid distribution centres, openly talking about genocide and ethnic cleansing. This is a war on the Palestinian people as a whole. It's a genocide. It's not just about defeating Hamas. And anybody who wants to see a political solution, a lasting solution where armed conflict and violence is brought to an end, needs first to bring pressure on Israel to halt this onslaught. And from there, you can begin to build a durable political solution. But that's not going to come from allowing Israel to continue its rampage.
All right, Carl, well, thank you very much for joining me. I've now got with me Sir Michael Ellis, a former Attorney General, former Cabinet Office Minister. Indeed, we worked in the Cabinet Office together. Michael, I am a great supporter of the State of Israel, of its right to exist and its right to self-defence. But it does seem to me that Israel is losing the propaganda war, and that the British government, Starmer, who was very supportive of Israel a year ago, has now felt he can't do it anymore. And this isn't entirely his weakness. It's that Israel is not getting its message across well enough.
Well, look, I think it is rather difficult to get a message across when, of course, we have lots of media entities who are, frankly, biased against Israel. And, you know, we all know about the BBC in that regard, but they're not the only ones. And it's therefore very difficult for them to get a fair hearing. But let's take a step back here. I mean, I do agree with one thing that Carl, your previous guest, just said, and that is that this is the Prime Minister, this is Keir Starmer under pressure. He's under pressure internally. He's under pressure from his own party, and that's why he's doing this, and that's why he's doing it now. And the reason you can see that and say that is not because of anything, whatever side one takes on the Israel-Palestine issue. Look at other examples. I mean, there's pressure to recognise Somaliland. Somaliland is an unrecognised state which is pro-West in a very strategic location to deal with the Houthis in Yemen. No one's coming close in the UK to recognising them. Why is all the noise here on this issue? The noise on this issue is because Keir Starmer, as usual, is buckling to his internal pressure.
Yes, but not perhaps just internal pressure, that the polling in the UK is not as supportive as Israel as it used to be. And that worries me, because Israel is an important ally for us, the only effective democracy in the Middle East, a supporter of many of the values that we share, and yet it's not seen as a strong ally who we ought to defend by the British public anymore.
Well, point one is, Jacob, I'm rather old-fashioned about these things. I think leadership should be about leading, and it shouldn't be about following the latest newspaper headline or the latest opinion poll, because it depends on, with the greatest respect, it depends on how the question is posed, and you know as well as I do that opinion polls have a certain value, and politicians always want to say that, but the reality is it depends how you ask the question, and it depends what information the public have been given. And, of course, we have got this issue of biased media coverage, which is a worldwide phenomenon, and we can speculate about the cause of that, but I think it's undeniable. But I think what the real root of the issue is it not, is it fair to put all the pressure on a democratic state, by the way, whose Supreme Court regularly overrules its government, almost as regularly as the UK Supreme Court overrules this government, which has, frankly, Muslims and other ethnic minorities throughout its judiciary, throughout its military, throughout its legislature, which is a completely inclusive and forward-looking country and the only democracy in the Middle East. But there's no pressure on Hamas. How can that possibly be right?
Well, is it possibly because it seems like a David and Goliath battle, and that Goliath, oddly, considering the biblical context, is the Israeli state? And it seems to be powerful, it seems to be strong, it seems to have the weaponry, and the Gaza seems to be the weak and downtrodden, and there seems to be a disproportionality in the use of power against someone who is so weak.
But you can be very ruthless if you're Hamas, because you don't care about your people. If you're Hamas, you throw gay people off tall buildings. You torture your own people when they step out of line. You deprive them of food in order to create television camera scenes. And you can do that because you are careless and carefree, I should say, about your own people. Democracies can't do that, and every life matters, and unfortunately that's the case.
But the sort of question I keep on coming back to is that Hamas, this evil terrorist organisation, despicable organisation, is winning the propaganda battle against a mature democracy. And you come on, you're an excellent spokesman. The Israeli ambassador is, I think, a superb spokesman for Israel. Not everyone who comes on always puts the Israeli case as elegantly as it could be put.
Well, that's nothing. I'm not an official spokesman, of course, as you know, but I see this as a battle of right and wrong. It's pretty binary. We have hostages still in dungeons. And these are hostages, by the way, that are being kept in medieval conditions, that are being raped, that are being starved. This is absolutely evil stuff. And no one is talking about that. And that's why, you know, we are absolutely crucial in the interest of justice that we do talk about.
And this is the very good point that David Lord Wolfson has made, that if Hamas were to release all the hostages and to declare peace with Israel...
Ceasefire there is.
The ceasefire there is, and there's no recognition of a Palestinian state. So the government seems to have its logic turned on its head.
I think the government is completely off-kilter here, and I think it's a recipe for disaster, because either way Hamas wins. They've got themselves in such a mess that if now Israel kowtows to the British government, which, by the way, it won't
take any notice.
It won't take any notice. It's completely irrelevant. If they were to do that, then there would be a ceasefire, and Hamas gets to stay in power. If the Israelis were to say they're not going to comply with what the British have said, then, as you know, in those circumstances, Hamas would be recognised as a state. We would be in the position of this country recognising a terrorist entity that is a proscribed organisation, Hamas, as a state. And by the way, it's not in compliance with international law. Forgive me for being a bit of a lawyer again here, Jacob.
But you're as bad as Lord Hammer.
Well, but it's... No, no, thank you. But what I would say is this. If you're going to have a government, which this government claims it's going to be, which is going to be absolutely beholden to international law and to, you know, even to kowtow to Mauritius and give away British sovereign territory when it didn't need to, then you're going to have to be consistent. And it's not in compliance with international law to recognise the Palestinian state when we don't have recognised borders.
So it's international law until Labour backbenchers don't like it. Michael, thank you very much indeed. Well, the British-bashing Tate Modern has blamed Brexit for its decline in visitors, but I'll be revealing the real reason in just a moment.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The heat wave is now easing across parts of Greece and also parts of Turkey, but elsewhere across Europe, still some humid air creating thundery downpours. But across the west, particularly across Portugal, Spain, most of France, it's largely dry, plenty of sunshine. But across parts of Germany, northern parts of Italy, still a chance of some quite intense thundery downpours. And also still across parts of Greece and Bulgaria, we could start to see some outbreaks of rain. But otherwise, for the large majority, plenty of sunshine and warm temperatures.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A thunderstorm warning has been issued for tomorrow across central and southeastern parts of England, so a chance that we could start to see some travel disruption. But for the time being, high pressure remaining largely dominant, particularly across the southwest. But this at times swinging in frontal systems, so that means more cloud, also some light outbreaks of rain to end the day across Scotland. But for many, for most of the night, it should remain mostly dry. Then we need to draw our attention to areas of Wales, central parts of England. We'll start to see some showery outbreaks move their way through across dawn. And for all, it is going to be quite a mild and muggy night to come. Some towns and cities not dropping much past 17 to 18 degrees Celsius. Then during the early hours of the morning across Scotland, once again, it's set to be quite cloudy, possibly quite murky at times. Light outbreaks of rain in western areas, but across Aberdeenshire, some of these areas of rain could turn quite heavy at times. A chance of some showers across Northern Ireland, but northern parts of England should remain mostly dry. Now, still plenty of showers across parts of Wales, perhaps some isolated showers too across parts of the southeast. And through the morning, we'll start to see more and more of these showers across the south, banding together to give persistent outbreaks of rain at times. And into the afternoon, this could also turn thundery, so we're likely to see some hail and also some frequent lightning. Also a chance we could see some thundery showers across eastern parts of Scotland and northeastern parts of England. But elsewhere, particularly across the west, there should still be plenty of sunshine. Another warm, muggy day to come, highs once again reaching around 25 degrees Celsius across the south. Now, we'll see those showers ease away Thursday night, which means a much brighter day on Friday. Still a chance of showers mainly across eastern coasts, but these should be mostly light to moderate. And it could be quite breezy at times too across eastern coastal areas, but mostly dry into Saturday. Different story on Sunday, though, as we see a return of outbreaks of rain move in from the west, but still once again warm in any sunshine.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around, a nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Welcome back. The Britain-hating and Brexit-bashing, boring Tate has blamed Brexit, of all things, for its decline in visitors, which has seen them slump 27% since 2019. However, the ever-popular British Museum, full of Elgin marbles and Egyptian mummies, reached a record high of 6.4 million visitors in the year to March. Clearly, in spite of Brexit, as the BBC used to say. Perhaps the real issue is that the Tate is just a bit dull and can't compete with better galleries. And that's the Tate goes on and on with all sorts of troubles and boredoms, which we don't necessarily need to mention immediately, but I'll bring in my brilliant and perspicacious panel, Wayne Towler and Matthew Stadler, to talk about this, because, Matthew, let me bring you in first. The Tate's just gone on lefty thing and now is blaming Brexit, and it's a dull museum. If it upped its game, pulled up its socks, it'd be better.
I feel almost uniquely unqualified to talk about this, Jacob, because to my great shame, I have not availed myself of these national treasures, and I think we should agree that...
What, never?
No, not recently.
Not recently,
Of course
OK.
I have at some point in my life, or several points in my life. Not recently, I should have said.
as a schoolchild.
Thank you for helping me to correct myself. No, the Tate and the Tate Modern and the National Gallery and many of our other galleries are great national treasures of which we should be rightly proud. So I'm reluctant to turn this into any sort of culture war. You may suggest that the Tate is trying to do precisely that. What little I understand of this may be explained by the idea that younger people might want to go to the Tate Modern more than they want to go to the National Gallery or perhaps the British Museum.
But not many of them. That's the problem, because it's gone down in number.
Yes, go to the British Museum, go to the National Gallery, go to anywhere else. Today I was at the Manchester Square. There's plenty of younger people going, and that's sort of full of fragonards. No, I think the fact is the Tate Modern is probably better as a building right now than it is as a collection. I was at the Tate Britain this afternoon. I went to visit it, not knowing I was going to be talking about this. It's full. It's absolutely full. I think it's a problem for the Tate Modern, not the Tate Britain. So, and to suggest, as you did, that young people are coming over here, you just have to walk through the streets of Westminster to be drowning in young people from Europe, trust me.
But it's definitely not Brexit, is it, that stopped people going?
It can't be, because they're here.
It's how they hang the pictures, it's the
also,
story they tell.
You go into a bookshop, and you go into the Tate Britain bookshop, and it's just dribbling with lefty ghastliness, and it's still got a whole section on anti-Brexit books. 10 years on. Get over it.
What is lefty ghastliness?
It's just.
What is that?
It's just this constant. If you read The Bookshop, you would feel that most artists of the last 50 years were either female or non-white or both, just because that is what's being constantly pushed. Now, there
Pushed
are
by
plenty...
whom? Pushed by
By The Bookshop. This is what we want you to read. This is what we want you to know about.
But why do booksellers, who presumably
the bookshop
want to...
in the gallery.
But why do
because they have a
bookshop
position and a
runners
perspective.
Want to convince us that the majority of artists are not white
because they're
or
trying,
or
they are
female?
embarrassed about the canon. They're embarrassed about the historical canon. I mean, there's nothing... Angelica Kaufman is brilliant. But these days, if a gallery has got a Kaufman, that's the thing they want to talk about, because they've got a female artist from the Enlightenment period. So it is downplaying the historical canon. It is undermining the basic levels of culture that we've had in order to push a particular agenda, which is an agenda of feminism and
But
ethnicity.
the Tate Modern isn't really about the historical canon, is it?
No,
It's precisely about modern art, isn't it?
And people don't want to go.
People don't want to go.
That's the point.
That has nothing to do with what you would call sort of lefty garbage.
But
No, it is.
Matthew,
That is
your
precisely
admission
the
that
point.
you haven't gone is part of the problem. They haven't drawn you in to go and see. And I went around the National Portrait Gallery recently, and it's done a rehang, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's well worth going around, and it's kept historic context, and it hasn't thrown our history all up in the air.
But it still has a lot of modern art.
To be fair to the Tate Modern...
It's not modern art. It's got some. It's got some. Yeah, that's true. It's got some modern art.
Portraiture.
To be fair to the Tate Modern, as I said in my introductory remarks, my Ludditism extends beyond the Tate Modern. Although when I was 14, I did win the school art prize, and that took in Renaissance art and modern art and contemporary art.
We bring you the best panellists at GBNews, the winners of art prizes when they were 14. In other news that GBNews has exclusively revealed, 900 migrants crossed the Channel today, making an absolute mockery of Labour's disastrous smash the gangs plan, as well as its futile one-in, one-out deal with the French. Well, back to my panel. Come on, 900. 900. Matthew, you're good at defending this government. This is an absolute failure, isn't it?
What I would say to you, and I'm not here to defend the government, is that, of course, a country, let's go back to basics, needs to have control of its borders. But we also have a responsibility, as we know, under the law, to those who might be in trouble at sea. And I saw someone who is no longer part of Reform, but an MP, an elected member of Parliament, Rupert Lowe, on social media today saying that we should send the Royal Navy into the Channel and send those boats backwards and deal with the legal consequences afterwards. That is the sort of extreme position that appeals to some people, but thankfully a minority in this country. I challenge Nigel Farage, and I challenge you, if you were ever to defect to Reform, if things were to get so bad for the Tories you felt you could no longer remain a Conservative ahead of the next election. Tell us how you are actually going to change this within the law, or if you're going to change the law by withdrawing us from various treaties. I would suggest to you you are then going to render us a basket case along with Belarus and Russia.
And Australia.
And
not in
all
Europe.
sorts of other countries.
Australia cannot be part of the ECHR because they're not in Europe.
But the point is that they could stop the boats because they were not part of any form of ECHR-style law.
And Australia has pretty good human rights.
And it does.
But what is the solution? It's very easy to criticise.
It's incentives. If you make it clear, as Farage has, if you make it clear that nobody who arrives here illegally, or as I'm sure the government would say, irregularly, but no, illegally, use illegal methods to get here, then you will never receive right to remain. Never. Period.
Well, the last Conservative government passed that into law. Labour's getting rid of that.
However, with the ECHR, it's been challenged time and time and time again through the courts and lost.
But so
you've got to lose
what would you do with these people if you were to enact
honestly,
that? Hang on, let me ask the question.
I don't care.
Well, so
I
you
don't
may
care.
not
They can go back to France, they can go back to their home countries.
Then you should be nowhere near power, and
Why?
your party should be nowhere near power. Let me explain to you, because if you don't care about legal consequences, and you don't care about human beings, fine, but if you don't care about human beings and what happens to them, then you should be nowhere near
care about the human beings of this
nor
country.
should you should care about more than just the human beings of this
that's the
country.
job
I
of a
care about the
government.
human beings of this country, and I care about the human beings of other countries as well.
I
And
wish
the
them no
reality
harm.
is that even if you were to enact such a law, you can't then just put these people on planes to other countries unless they accept them backwards. That's where the fantasy comes in.
Well, Rwanda was willing to accept non-nationals.
Hardly any people
but
are going to
but
go
there are
to
other
Rwanda.
countries.
Hardly
Denmark uses
anyone.
Kosovo. Estonia's looking at it. There are other places. You look at this as if there's nothing we can do apart from accept everybody. That's rubbish.
If we could
Absolute
find a proper functioning democracy that would be willing to take people who come to this country illegally or irregularly, because I don't want the British. I'll tell you why very quickly. This is why this is one of the. This is one and Rwanda. If we're going to rehash that disastrous Tory policy, which I thought was immoral and incompetent, Rwanda is run by a man who got 99% of the vote. The idea that if you're an asylum seeker, you're going to be safe in that country, to me seems to be absurd.
Matthew, it's a bit rich to talk about incompetent when we talk about have a government that says smash the gangs and 900 people arrived today.
They failed so far.
They are
have
incompetent.
Failed.
They are not capable of defending our
The
borders.
point I'm making to you is that this is a very difficult. This is a very difficult. You say defending our borders. They're not coming here with guns.
Some of them actually have been arrested
It was a former
for alleged terrorist activities.
Tory Home Secretary, wasn't it, Suella Braverman, who talked about an invasion, which was outrageous language.
It's not outrageous.
These people are not coming with guns. It's not about defending the country.
No, they're coming. They're coming
people,
with,
when they get here, are put into a system.
They're coming with
they're
a
on
desire.
rubber dinghies.
Yes,
I want them to stop, but I don't want them to stop at the expense of them losing their lives or us losing our ability to function as a civilised country.
I want them to stop, absolutely. And nobody's suggesting they're losing their lives. They're more likely to lose their life if they keep on coming on small boats.
They certainly
That's how people drown.
They certainly shouldn't be coming. But this is a problem that is beyond just the Labour Party.
You have no idea how to stop them.
I think I said that this was my most perspicacious panel. Perhaps I should have said my most pugnacious panel, which is normally on Tuesday nights. In a moment, the Blob is going after Nigel Farage, and we will reveal its secret plot.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me good there.
Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Nigel Farage is facing an investigation by the parliamentary watchdog over allegations that he failed to declare support from a public relations boss who later became a Donald Trump official. Nigel has addressed the matter, explaining he intends to cooperate fully with the investigation. Apparently a peer has made a complaint, which is potentially a breach of privilege, as peers must not interfere in the House of Commons. This is becoming part of a pattern as Labour follows the Democrats' failed approach to destroying Trump. They began by trying to change the system, by lowering the voting age. Then, in attacks orchestrated by Downing Street, they disgracefully accused Nigel of being on the side of Jimmy Savile, and now they're going after Nigel on some petty technicality. Well, I'm joined now by my previously enormously pugnacious panel, but let's hope it's back to perspication now, Gwen Towler and Matthew Stadlen. Matthew, oddly, if you persecute your political opponents, you seem to make them stronger. The votes for 16 seems to be just one of those things where you try and fiddle it for your own side, which often fails. The Downing Street approved approach to the morning round yesterday and today of saying that it was helping the future Jimmy Saviles seemed to me to be just silly. And now you get a complaint to the Standards Commissioner from a peer who has no business getting involved in House of Commons matters. It all begins to look as if the blob doesn't like Nigel.
I don't think you can say that a peer represents the so-called blob. I don't see a conspiracy. If you give me grounds for a conspiracy, then I'll take it at face value. On the issue of Labour's attack on Farage and suggesting that he was somehow on the side or would be on the side of paedophiles and Jimmy Savile-type characters if he were to oppose this bill, that's not just silly, it's offensive. And I think it's very poor politics, particularly given that Starmer himself was attacked for failing in the view of Boris Johnson for not successfully prosecuting...
Which is actually true.
...Jimmy Savile. Well, I think Starmer was robustly defended on that and robustly defended himself, I'm sure, at the time. These attacks are not good politics, I think. You look at what Elon Musk did, not so long ago, talking in horrific terms about how Starmer was complicit in the rape of Britain. That was appalling, and I think this attack from Labour is not sensible.
But does it show that Labour's getting a bit desperate about Nigel? Is it seeing the left vote fracture with Jeremy Corbyn having a new party, with the Palestinian parties? It's got to go for Nigel, and it's got to do something to stop him.
I sat in this very studio with Nigel Farage on his show not long ago, and he was asking me about whether Labour felt threatened to the left. And at the time, I didn't particularly think so. And I still think that with the threat, and yes, I use the word threat deliberately, of a Nigel Farage prime ministership in 4 years' time, it's very possible that the left will come together again and vote tactically. But there's no doubt that with the launch of Corbyn's party, the relative success of the Lib Dems and the Greens, Labour are vulnerable on their left flank. It's all to play for. If I were in number 10 Downing Street, of course I'd be concerned about reform, because apart from anything else, although I disagree with him very strongly and think he's often very irresponsible in the way he does politics, Nigel Farage is one of the most successful political figures of our time, and reform are leading in the polls.
And this is therefore a compliment to Nigel that it shows he's doing well. And actually, the Democrats' attacks on Trump failed. If you want to be historic about it, the attacks on John Wilkes failed. That when you really go for people in this way, electors don't necessarily like it.
Well, they don't, because they don't like a bully. People don't like a bully. It is unfair. It feels unfair when the apparatus of the state gangs up on somebody, particularly somebody who is being John Bullish, is being the independent man, who's being very, very in that traditional role in England, the rebel. And they don't like it. We prefer Robin Hood to the Sheriff of Nottingham, don't we?
But the right have been attacking, as the left did to the Tories, have been attacking Starmer specifically and viciously for months.
Because he's
rubbish. You can't have double standards, can you?
No, I'll say he's rubbish. I won't say he's a paedophile or a paedophile supporter. There's a big difference.
But I do think there is.
There's a huge difference.
There is real vitriol, and as I said, Elon Musk did accuse him of being complicit in the rape of Britain.
You will notice that Elon Musk is not a British politician. He's not a member of Reform.
He has a lot of fans in Britain, nonetheless.
Yes, because
politics
he
should
freed
be
up
clean.
speech.
Politics should be clean. Starmer, I think, and Labour called for politics to be cleaner, and on this they've failed because they've dirtied it.
Gentler politics. But he's a paedophile supporter. No, it's just... I'm sorry.
And authorised by Downing Street.
And signed off by Downing Street.
That was the clear morning round line to take.
I agree with Matthew here, is that it was stupid, particularly given the CPS history of Starmer, because it just meant that all the commentators could go, hold on, weren't you the head of the DPP under that period? Didn't you apologise for failing to prosecute? Why? So it's a very, very stupid politics on their part.
Labour Party being stupid, you heard it here first. Anyway, thank you to my panel. And finally, my condolences to our friends in France, because they've found themselves on their knees begging Trump administration for a tariff exemption on, of all things, champagne. Champagne Charlie is my name. But inadvertently, this has exposed the perfect bargaining chip we can use to force the French to take back illegal migrants crossing the Channel. And they can say to them, no champagne unless you take a migrant, 1 bottle per migrant or something. And if America isn't buying so much, perhaps supply will be more available for us and the price will come down. So it's time to open the Bollinger, which you will no doubt want to do next when you're listening to Patrick Christie's. Patrick, what are you going to be talking about other than the really exciting cricket match that's gone on this evening in Rington between a Rington 11 and a Blagden 11 with 2 of my sons playing for Blagden? That'll be your leading, but after that, what comes next?
Well, absolutely, and up the Blagden, obviously. But, right, Loz, the latest on the Manchester Airport incident, veterans being treated worse than illegal immigrants, and I've got an exclusive for you. The French have let a man who was supplying small boats to illegal migrants walk free from prison. All that and much more after your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A thunderstorm warning has been issued for tomorrow across central and southeastern parts of England, so a chance that we could start to see some travel disruption. But for the time being, high pressure remaining largely dominant, particularly across the southwest. But this at times swinging in frontal systems, so that means more cloud, also some light outbreaks of rain to end the day across Scotland. But for most of the night, it should remain mostly dry. Then we need to draw our attention to areas of Wales, central parts of England. We'll start to see some showery outbreaks move their way through across dawn, and for all it is going to be quite a mild and muggy night to come. Some towns and cities not dropping much past 17 to 18 degrees Celsius. Then during the early hours of the morning across Scotland, once again it's set to be quite cloudy, possibly quite murky at times. Light outbreaks of rain in western areas, but across Aberdeenshire some of these areas of rain could turn quite heavy at times. A chance of some showers across Northern Ireland, but northern parts of England should remain mostly dry. Now, still plenty of showers across parts of Wales, perhaps some isolated showers too across parts of the southeast. And through the morning, we'll start to see more and more of these showers across the south, banding together to give persistent outbreaks of rain at times. And into the afternoon, this could also turn thundery, so we're likely to see some hail and also some frequent lightning. Also a chance we could see some thundery showers across eastern parts of Scotland and northeastern parts of England. But elsewhere, particularly across the west, there should still be plenty of sunshine. Another warm, muggy day to come, highs once again reaching around 25 degrees Celsius across the south. Now, we'll see those showers ease away Thursday night, which means a much brighter day on Friday. Still a chance of showers mainly across eastern coasts, but these should be mostly light to moderate, and it could be quite breezy at times too across eastern coastal areas, but mostly dry into Saturday. Different story on Sunday though, as we see a return of outbreaks of rain move in from the west, but still once again warm in any sunshine.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you can win big, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? The holiday of a lifetime? Or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? Lines close on the 1st of August, so make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232.